We were somewhere around Barstow on the edge of the desert when... Ugh. You'd think after all these years I'd know which side of a microphone to point forward. What's up YouTube? Welcome back, my name's Tony. Today we're going to be chatting about these. This is an Apex 460 microphone. It's probably one of, if not the, cheapest tube microphone on the market. I bought this for about $200 or $300 about 10 years ago. And these days the newer model, the 460B, can be bought for about $310 brand new. Now these mics are a great entry-level tube mic, but where they really shine is as a chassis for modification. If you have one of these microphones, there's a company in British Columbia, Canada called Advanced Audio. You can send them your Apex 460, and for about $500 they'll modify it to sound just like a vintage AKG C12. But if you've got one of these kicking around and you don't have $500 for the mod, then I'm here to show you how you can improve this microphone with a very easy DIY modification. So as I mentioned before, the Apex 460 is a tube microphone. Now the thing with a lot of cheap tube equipment in the studio world is that the companies that make that cheap studio equipment generally stock it full of cheap tubes. So if you've ever looked into tubes in your lifetime, you've probably heard of a 12AX7. 12AX7s are great, they're affordable, there's a lot of them around, and they sound awesome in guitar amps. But the reason they sound so great in guitar amps is the same reason you want to swap those tubes out of your studio equipment. They're a very high gain tube. So that works great for guitar amps, causing that breakup and that distortion when you really push them to their limit. But what that means for studio equipment is you've got a lot less headroom to work with. So whether you got a loud sound source or a lot of gain on your preamp, you might end up with unwanted distortion in your signal. Now thankfully for us engineers, there's a handful of tubes out there that follow the same pin out pattern as a 12AX7 with considerably lower gain. The tube types 12AY7, 12AU7, and 12AT7 all follow the same pin out pattern as a 12AX7. So for any piece of equipment that has a 12AX7 in it, you can swap out any one of those three tubes. So what I'm going to show you today is how to switch the tube on your Apex 460 microphone. So I've tried out a few different tubes on my 460, and the tube I settled on is a 12AY7. So without any further blabbing, let's get right into it. Alright guys, so here's all you need to get started. You need your Apex 460, a replacement tube, and a small set of screwdrivers. I would also highly recommend a small container to keep the small screws in, and a set of reading glasses. As I've said before, reading glasses are basically small magnifying glasses you can wear on your face. Now I've also got a pair of pliers here, because when I looked at my mic before I started filming this video to refresh myself on how this is done, I realized that a few of the screws in there that I'm going to need to take out are incredibly stripped. Now before we actually get into modifying this microphone, please take a second to hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, and hit the notification bell. So to open up your microphone, what you're going to do is twist the bottom section here. Once that comes off, the main tube of the microphone will slide right off. Put that over here. And you'll see the electronics underneath. Now, there's two small screws, here and here, that hold the tube in. So take your small Phillips screwdriver and unscrew those. And make sure not to use too much force when you're unscrewing these. This one on my microphone on the left has been completely stripped because a careless young me would have put too much force into either unscrewing it or screwing it back in. So I'm going to have to use a set of pliers for this one. So once you've got your screws out, you should be able to lift up the tube and push it forward. Now I should mention to be careful about these little guardrails on the side. They basically keep the wiring away from the heat of the tube. But they're not actually attached to anything, and they can fall out pretty easily. When they do fall out, they can be a real pain in the butt to get back in. Now the bottom support for your tube is going to be the first part to come out. And after that, you can very gently pull the tube out from its enclosure. So you'll notice at the bottom of these tubes, the pins don't quite form a complete circle. That's just to make sure you don't put them in wrong. Next thing we're going to do is put our new tube in. So look into the enclosure inside of your mic and find out where the gap in the inside circle is. Line up your pins with that, and again, very gently, place your new tube in there. Now, you'll notice in the tube's enclosure that there's two small cutaways on either side. That's to leave room for the wiring that goes down into the cable connection. So you can gently slide that back on, line up those notches with the wiring on either side, and press your tube down into position so that it's secure there, and then rescrew in the base of your tube. Then you can reattach the main cylinder and the bottom piece. Now on the head piece of your microphone, there will be a little cardioid symbol. That marks the front of the microphone. There's also a little notch on the front of the casing so you can line it all up correctly. Screw the bottom piece back on, and that's it. That's all you have to do. We were somewhere around Barstow on the edge of the desert when the drugs began to take hold. I remember saying something like, "I feel a bit lightheaded, maybe you should drive." And suddenly there was a terrible roar all around us, and the sky was full of what looked like huge bats. We were somewhere around Barstow on the edge of the desert when the drugs began to take hold. I remember saying something like, "I feel a bit lightheaded, maybe you should drive." And suddenly there was a terrible roar all around us, and the sky was full of what looked like huge bats. So I didn't adjust the gain on my preamps between each of these mic tests. And from a quick snapshot of Reaper, you can tell that the waveform of the recording with the 12AY7 is quite a bit smaller than the waveform of the recording with the 12AX7. The 12AY7 is a lower gain tube, so it's not amplifying the signal as much as the 12AX7 is, which in a guitar amp may not be a desirable trait. In a tube microphone, that gives you a lot more headroom to play with. So you could scream into this mic a little bit more, you could have a louder sound source on this side of the microphone and not have to worry about unwanted distortion or breakup within your microphone. It also, to me, sounds a little bit more airy in the top end, which again is a result of having just that little bit of extra headroom. Well, thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you liked what you saw and would like to see more content like this, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell. Thanks again for watching, we'll see you next time.